Hi friends, welcome back to another episode of Generation Tech. My name is Alan. If you were a Stormtrooper or some other kind of science fiction soldier, what would be the one piece of technology you would want the most? An energy-based rifle, a fancy suit of armor, an exoskeleton? Well, for me, it would definitely be the rechargeable energy shield, like the one we see Master Chief use in Halo. I've always been impartial to shields because unlike armor plating or bullet resistance fiber, shields can usually regenerate with proper usage. In Star Wars, we see all types of energy shields called deflector shields. They're used to protect things ranging in size from entire planets to sometimes something as small as an X-Wing. And it makes sense, especially for spacecraft. Besides avoiding turbo laser fire all the time, there's also a lot of debris in space, especially around the orbit of very populated planets. Even in deep space, you might also run into microasteroids, which can easily tear through a pilot's canopy. This is a technology that has been around since the earliest days of the Old Republic, so why don't infantry soldiers have them? Well, first, let's take a look at shield technology in Star Wars and how it works to get a better understanding of how it can be implemented in armor. Shields are generally split into three categories: ray shields, particle shields, and concussion shields. Ray shields were developed relatively early on in the galaxy for radiation protection purposes. When spacers ventured away from the protection of a planet's electromagnetic sphere or atmosphere, they were bombarded with cosmic rays. Ray shields were able to absorb energy like sponges and at times even scatter these harmful rays. This meant that they could protect pilots from background radiation, but also high-powered plasma projectiles and lasers. Ray shields could not stop high-energy solid objects like asteroids or proton torpedoes, but they were effective in stopping organic beings, mainly because it severely shocked anything that tried to pass through it. This is why ray shields were commonly used to imprison individuals. Droids, however, were able to pass through ray shields with little difficulty, as we see during the Battle of Naboo, where they bypassed the deflector shield generator projector mounted on a pair of Gungan bombuses. Generally, every type of starship is equipped with some form of a ray shield. Now, the second less common shield that was used in Star Wars was the particle shield. These were usually found on larger ships and dealt specifically with solid projectiles such as missiles or bombs. Concussion shields were basically navigational shields that worked just like particle shields and helped deflect asteroids and other debris in space. Now, out of these three types of shields, ray shields were the most portable and used on smaller platforms like ground vehicles or even smaller droids like the Droideka. The shields worked the same way that thermal conducting material did. While some of the energy from incoming rounds was reflected back into the environment, a lot of the energy was absorbed by the shield and then rerouted into heat sinks in the neutrino radiator. When the heat became too much, however, the shields would dissipate and have to cool down before it recharged. One of the biggest problems with these shields was the massive energy consumption it required to power a shield. Planetary shields, for instance, were famously difficult to crack even with an entire fleet of Star Destroyers because a planet was massive and could house multiple energy generators and radiators. Theater shields also had the advantage of size and space on their side. The Mon Calamari cruiser employed multiple smaller shield generators that could recharge quickly, as opposed to an Imperial-class Star Destroyer shield generators, which were usually more powerful but less numerous, and therefore took a longer time to recharge. In Star Wars, these larger shields were usually powered by some variant of a fusion reactor, which could generate ridiculous amounts of energy. These fusion reactors could be miniaturized and placed in something as small as a snub fighter, but they were generally way too large and heavy for an individual to carry on their body. This is why if a shield were designed for personal use, it would have to be powered by a battery of sorts, which would provide a considerably smaller amount of energy, which would limit the power of the shield. Which is why if I were to design a personal shield, I would make it reactive so it wasn't on at all times, consuming battery power. It would also have sensors on it that would detect incoming threats, which would activate the shield. Due to the nature of a ray shield, having a shield surrounding the trooper's entire body at all times could also prove to be problematic. For one, the ray shield had the tendency of shocking and knocking out anyone who touches it, which would make it very difficult for a soldier to interact with unshielded individuals. Also, ray shields that surround a wearer's hands and feet might prevent them from properly interacting with the environment or even walking on different types of surfaces. And that would be leaving out the radioactive heat sink that they would have to attach to their body somehow. As a matter of fact, one of the major reasons why personal shields are rarely used in Star Wars is because they're incredibly radioactive and would cause severe health issues for a soldier who would have to wear them for an extended period of time. And perhaps equally as important for a cost-conscious military force like the Imperial military, the cost of outfitting your entire army with costly generators, radiators, and shields would be a financial burden that they can't afford. That doesn't mean there aren't some workarounds and clever solutions. As a matter of fact, there have been many cases in Star Wars where individual soldiers, special forces, and entire armies have used personal shields. The first account of personal energy shields being used was during the Mandalorian Wars around 4,000 years before the Battle of Yavin. The Mandalorian Crusaders had a type of Icani melee shields attached to their already robust Neo-Crusader armor. The Icani were another warrior culture that believed that in order to truly know someone, you had to fight them, usually in unarmed or melee weapons duels. The Icani created dueling shields for this purpose. Now, the Mandalorians would adopt these shields and turn them into two types of shields. Some would protect from melee strikes, others could stop energy rounds. Other shields like the Arcanian Energy Shield could also protect the wearer from the elements. Little is known about how these shields were created. Like a lot of technology during the Old Republic period, it was lost, thanks to the constant infighting between the Jedi and Sith. But by looking at old pictures, you can tell that they were either wrist-mounted or belt-mounted and had large battery packs. When the fallen Jedi Revan and Malak returned to the Old Republic at the head of a massive Sith army, the Sith troopers they brought along with them were all deployed with personal shields, so they probably learned from the Mandalorians. In the earlier days of this conflict, when the Republic troopers first met these shielded soldiers, they were massacred. Eventually, this technology was reverse engineered by the Republic, and both sides soon were utilizing these shields. This led to increased use of melee weapons such as vibroblades, which could bypass most of the type of shields being used. After the Jedi Civil War ended, though, blaster technology had begun surpassing the shield's defensive capabilities, and the use of these personal shields became more rare. It also became too expensive and energy intensive to create a shield strong enough to protect people from the modern blasters that were being developed at the time. Also, these shields created even more radiation, which made it way too dangerous for a person to wear. By the time of the Clone Wars, however, we do see the use of handheld energy shields like the ones the Gungans used during the invasion of Naboo. It should be noted that the Gungan shields worked with hydrostatic technology, the same tech that kept water out of their underwater cities. We're not really sure how this system worked, but it probably didn't emit as much radiation and was more designed on a repulsor lift concept. The Separatist Commando droids also had a similar type of shield. These were unique because they only worked one way and allowed a droid to fire through the shield at enemy targets, but blocked incoming bolts. Now, the most promising version of the personal shield would come during the Clone Wars era. The Katarn armor worn by clone commandos had extremely robust personal shields that could protect the wearer from even the most powerful Verpine railgun rounds at point-blank range. These shields could also recharge relatively quickly, making it very useful on the battlefield. The clone commandos, who usually operated in small teams of 4, routinely carried out dangerous missions behind enemy lines where they were outnumbered by the enemy forces. Being able to shrug off multiple blaster impacts was a part of the job description. Beneath the shield, the Katarn series of armor had thicker than usual plastoid plating, which might or might not have protected the clone commandos from the radiation usually associated with these types of devices. Special Stormtroopers during this era were also equipped with a personal shield, which was most likely derived from the Katarn armor's design. The Chiss, who lived in the unknown region, also had their own personal shields, but the polarity of these shields usually were reversed, which trapped the individual inside the shield. They were actually used to trap burglars in case of a home invasion. One of the other benefits of this design was that it emitted radiation outwards away from the wearer instead of back in towards them. So as you can see, there are a lot of reasons why larger military forces like the Stormtroopers or the Grand Army of the Republic did not equip all of their soldiers with personal shields. Throughout galactic history, usually defensive technology was outpaced by offensive technology, and also shield technology was very expensive, and for a cost-conscious organization like the Empire, it would never really become a feasible thing to do. Anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Don't forget to subscribe, hit that notification button so you don't miss out on the rest of our awesome content. As usual, thanks for joining us today. If you're watching this, you are Generation Tech.